provisions in CRPC, the provisions in CPC, the provisions of Indian Evidence Act. So my session is more into theoretical part, and later sessions which is coming in evening today and tomorrow whole day we have the sessions. They are more technical sessions which will be governed by or taken by High Court and Supreme Court advocates. So starting with my session, the topic of my session is understanding the legal provisions related to examinations. Before getting into this session, we as a student, we have to understand that the examination is one of the key factor in order to determine the real justice, in order to provide the real justice to the victim. Victim we called so-called a victim, who is a real victim. In order to know that who is a real victim, we should do examinations. In order to do examinations, we should have some basic knowledge of legal provisions, so that we can very well understand, okay, these are the process. So what I have seen in my life, people go to court and they directly start asking anything. It is not allowed. You cannot ask anything anytime. That there are provisions which tell you that there are certain restrictions during the examination, whether or during the close examination, and so much other. So we'll start with the process. Before getting into this, first thing that we must know is of the witness. When I say of the witness, I mean say who can be a witness. The first question, because when it's come to examination and cross-examination, this is basically being done to a witness, whether it's a witness of a document, whether it is a witness eyewitness, or a chance witness, or a stock witness, or a trap witness, or a dicey witness, or a punch witness. It can be any person, but it will be a person who is a witness, even accused coming into the court while examination is being done, may examine as an accused or as a witness. So who can be a witness? This is the first question. That is we should know who can come as a witness. If you see the Bail Act part, the section 118 of Indian Evidence Act. So I will ask everybody, if possible, do have hand upon you Bail Act. We will go for Bail Act provisions also, because being a theoretical session, it is more into Bail Act. If you go into 118, I will read also the Bail Act for you. You will see all persons are competent to testify, unless they consider that they are not prevented. Try to understand. All persons can be a witness. When I say all person can be a witness, if a person is a child, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year, 5 year, he can be a witness. If a person is an old person, 100 years, 120 years, can be a witness. If a person is victim, he can be a witness. If a person is an accused, he can be a witness. But there is a condition, and if you see section 118 of Indian Evidence Act, then section 118, prima facie you can testify, you can bring any person to act as a witness. But there is a barrier, there is a hurdle, there is a stoppage created by this act, this section, which says that if you want any person to act as witness, prima facie obviously he must relate to some facts of the case, but we are not going into that part, because nobody will be allowed to be a witness until he is well aware about the facts, or until he is not talking about relevant acts. So there cannot be a witness who does not have any relevancy into the case. We know what you mean by relevancy. When I say relevancy, try to understand. The prima facie, court will always see that a particular person who is coming to the court, how his evidence is going to be relevant in this particular act or particular case in which he has come as a witness. This is the first thing which is to be seen by the court. Once it is seen, then it comes section 118. Then section 118 will come and see, and they will see that whether a person who is coming have such understanding of a mind. They are talking about psychologically. If he has such understanding that if certain questions are being asked, will he be able to give a reasonable answer? If yes, then his evidence will be allowed. but if he is not able to give reasonable answer, then his evidence will not be allowed. Uh, when I say his evidence will be allowed or his evidence will not be allowed, we have to understand this part. Let me disable annotation first. For example, let us take an example. An old person has come in a murder case, and he's saying that I have seen murder myself, that Mr. X has killed Mr. Y, and I want to testify myself. I want to give evidence. Obviously, first of all, court will see, okay, is it a prime witness or any sort of witness who have directly connection with the case? Answer is yes, because he's saying I am eyewitness, I have seen it. Now the second question has come to the court, and second question is this: will he be able to ask, or he will be able to answer certain questions which are reasonable? In order to do this, if you see into the court, you will see they will ask, what is your name? What is your father name? Where do you reside? How you was be available to there? This is the basic questions which is being asked to a witness. Why these question is being asked to a witness? For example, suppose this person who has come to a court, I want to give evidence into a murder case, and we ask him a question, what is your name? The name on the record is Mr. X, and he says, I think I am X, but I can be Y also, but Z is also possible. And what is this? He's not understanding the question, he's not able to give a reasonable answer to it. If this is the situation, though he may be may be very crucial, very important witness, but still his evidence will not be allowed. So section 118 is the first thing. So another question which come into my mind, people generally ask, but I will not go into dumb witness and all this, you know this, but generally question is this: suppose Mr. X is a mad person, who is a lunatic, pagal, insane, and he has come as a witness. Suppose there is a mad person, lunatic person who is running on the road and he has seen some murder. He has come as a witness. Can he be considered as a valid person to give a witness, to act as a witness into the court? Can he be a witness into the court? Answer is yes. Even a lunatic can be a witness into the court. But how? The check or the test will be same. What is the test? Test is the uh, understanding of reasonability of mind. So every time court will check whether the person was conscious of mind or not when he is acting as a witness. When I say it's a conscious of a mind, then you have to understand the consciousness of a mind is not when the act was committed or the process at the time when he was seen or he was available as a witness to the crime scene. If I take in a criminal matter, the consciousness of a mind means at the point when he is acting as a witness, whether at that point he is able to understand the questions and able to understand the question and give reasonable answer to them. Another, for example, I was my conscious of mind and I see the murder of my brother in front of me, and due to that, I lose my mental stability. Though I am eyewitness, I lose my mental stability, and now the advocate want to bring me into the court as an eyewitness. I came to a court as an eyewitness there. Now, obviously, I am an eyewitness. I am a relevant witness. But the thing which is to be seen is the point when this person is coming to the court as a witness. At that point of time, whether he is able to understand uh, the reasonable question and give reasonable answer to this, yes, then yes, he will be a very good witness. But if no, so he may be an eyewitness, but still his evidence will not. This is section 118. So, similarly, second question which come into our mind is uh, once we have decided that okay, this can be a witness. Now the question rises: what n number of witness can be allowed by a particular party to be presented into a court. So if I am a party to a case, let be a plaintiff, let be a defendant, doesn't matter. How many numbers of witness will be allowed to prove my case? Answer is given under section 134. And this says, section 134 says, there is no n number of witnesses required. So we don't need any specific number of witnesses to be present before the court in order to prove the case. Even a single witness may be enough to prove a case, or even 1,000 witnesses may not be enough to prove the case. So it depends upon the party, first of all. Try to understand. So it is not, court will not restrict you. Court will never restrict a party to produce witnesses. Party can produce any number of witnesses. But obviously, court will check whether it is producing relevant witnesses or not, credible witness or not, whether witness have any relationship related to the relevancy, legal relevancy to the matter or not. Yes, then party can prove n number of cases. And obviously, court will always also see whether the number of witnesses which have been examined are enough to prove the case. If yes, they will stop the party. That now case has already been proved sufficiently on your part. There is no further requirement of any proof. Then they can ask him to not to give any further evidences, because you have complete your chain of evidences. But until the chain of evidences is not complete, court will not ask the party to only restrict your witness or your evidences to some n number of witnesses. So it can be any. So what we say, Supreme Court says, it is not quantity of evidence which matter, it is the quality of the evidence which matter. So always a judge, as a judge and as an advocate, you have to see, judge will always see that what number of or what quality of witnesses you have produced. Instead of they will not be seeing the what number of witnesses you have produced. You may produce any one witness, or you may produce 1,000 witnesses. Judge in front of you, sitting in front of you, will always see your witness as a quality, that's not as a quantity. So there may be a possible that you have produced 10 witnesses and the opponent party has produced only one witness. Still, he may have proved the case beyond a doubt, and he has shifted his burden of proof, and you may have failed to shift your burden of proof. If you have failed to shift your burden of proof, so n number of witnesses will not affect your chance of winning or not winning, right? Then now it's come examination of witnesses, and this is an important thing to go. Now it is come examination. So first of all, while it's come to examination of witness, first thing which we have to see is the order of production and examination of witness. What do you mean by order of production and examination of witness? This is to be seen. This is when you go to the court, when issues are framed, when the trial starts, and you are at the stage of evidences, and witnesses are to be produced. Now, court can ask you to produce this witness first, then produce this witness, then produce this witness. So there is any particular order to produce witnesses? Answer to this is no. There is no particular order to produce witness. You can produce in any sequence, right? So you can produce in Mr. X first, Mr. Y second, Mr. Z third. First, this is the first thing to understand. The court cannot make you force to produce a witness in a particular manner, but there are certain procedural laws. There are certain processes given in certain. If I say CPC, if I talk about CRPC, so there are certain provisions regarding production. So if you see section 130, if you see Indian Evidence Act section 135, then you will find the section 135 talk generally that there is no need to produce any sequence. There is no need of a sequence of evidence. So there is no sequence that A will come first, then B, then C, then D. There is no need. But there only section 135 of Indian Evidence Act shows that this production, the manner of production of witness will be according to the law and procedure established, or if it is no law and procedure, then as per the court may fix it. So they leave it to the court or the process. So obviously there are certain procedures. What do you mean by certain process? If I say certain process, if I talk about CPC generally, if you see CPC, then you will find the CPC order 16 generally and order 18 completely also, but specifically order rule 18 rule 3A. If you talk about these two, then you will find that CPC says that where a party itself want to become an evidence witness, suppose I am a plaintiff and I want to be a witness into my case, then yes, I have to produce myself before other parties. This is the first condition. So still they are not deciding the sequence, but they are telling that how to start the evidence. So if you want to give an evidence and party itself want to appear, if party itself want to appear into the court, then yes, the party have to produce themselves first, and then only the other sequence will be allowed. Similarly, if you go into CRPC, if you see there are provisions of section 372 to 370, 272 to 299. If you see the provisions of 272 to 299, they talk how the examinations of witnesses in criminal matters and how their evidence are to be recorded in criminal matters. So there is a process. This says one important thing that these provisions talk is that if there is a person, the accused, and you have to record the evidence, all evidences are to be recorded in the presence of accused. Suppose it is an examination of victim or examination of any other party, or other evidence is to be taken, or witness is coming on the part of prosecution, then accused must be available. When I say accused must be available, there is a provision. He might be available in a presence. In child cases or juvenile cases, he has been put behind a shield and he can see the witness, but witness cannot see him. Or in cases of other cases, some other rape cases or sexual offences cases, even his presence can be removed, and instead of that his advocate may be allowed. But there are certain provisions, but general provision is this, that the accused must be present. And if the accused is not able, or if the accused is not able to arrest, then yes, evidence can be taken in his absence only. This is CRPC talking. Plus CRPC also talk about that if general evidences are taken, then these evidences, material, not material evidences, general evidences are taken, or the evidence of documents are being taken, then they can also be taken on a written format in an affidavit. There is no need to call a person. There are certain provisions. Apart from this, the manner of examination, how it will happen, will not be decided by the court. It will be decided by the law and process. Okay. If there is no process, the natural justice will be followed. And what is the natural justice? CPC give an idea of natural justice. And what is the natural justice? That if the party want to give an evidence, then sequence start with the party. And after that, you can bring any person. But sequence start with the party itself. So when you are practicing an advocate and you want that your party must be a witness, you must start your evidence with your party only, right? And then only after that you will start. Next thing. Now, there are certain of examination. Once a witness has come, once we have decided, okay, this is the person who will start the witness, and we get to know, okay, the list of witnesses available, the manner of witness is available to you, and you know this is to start. Now I have produced a person. How we will do start examination. So first of all, if you see section 137, and this is important for us, I will be reading a Bail Act part for you. Examination as a whole is to be seen in three perspectives: examination in chief, cross-examination, and re-examination. And these three are very important. First of all, examination in chief. I will read section 137 for you. Don't worry, that is important to read for you. If you see examination in chief in general, when I produce any person, when I say I produce, I mean to say I can be a prosecution. I can be a defendant. If a party himself, if any party, whether a prosecution or defendant, that means whether an accused or a victim, a petitioner or a defendant, a petitioner or a respondent, it can be any person. When a party produce any person to be a witness on his part, the party who produced that witness, when asked the question to that witness, that is known as examination in chief. Suppose I produce a person to a court to act as a witness for me. I have a right to ask question to that person. I will inquire that person. Okay. The inquiry done by a party who produced the witness is known as examination in chief. And after the examination in chief, and this examination in chief is my wish. I can do it, I cannot do it. That is my wish. Once examination in chief is done, on the basis of this examination in chief, the opponent party will inquire this witness to whom I have examined. It will inquire my witness. The inquiry done by the opponent party is known as cross-examination. So when the opponent party will ask the question to the witness who has been produced by the parties, this is known as cross-examination. What is re-examination? After the cross-examination has been done, the party who called the witness want to examine this witness again. Suppose in cross-exam, we will do this part also. Suppose a new fact has arisen, new fact has come into play while he was cross-examination, which the party who has produced the witness want to explain it. Then only re-examination will be allowed. Okay. And after once re-examination had been done, if further new case has been allowed, obviously cross-examination is also be allowed. So I want to go for section 137. We will give a reading to section 137 and we will explain it again and we will understand it again. If you have Bail Act, well and good. If you don't have Bail Act, I will give a reading to you so that we will go into the words of it. If I go into the words of it, section 137 says, the examination of a witness by a party who calls him shall be called examination. We have done this, very important. The examination of a witness by an adverse party, that is the opponent party, shall be called his cross-examination. And next is re-examination. The examination of witness subsequent to cross-examination by the party who called him shall be called his re-examination. That is the party. So suppose why this re-examination is allowed. Let us read. Why we allow re-examination? What is the importance of re-examination? Try to understand. In order to understand the importance of re-examination, what happened in cross-examination? What is re-examination's importance or how you will be done? Suppose in cross-examination, I have asked certain questions to the witness which other party has brought. And due to that, the credibility of the witness or the credibility of the evidence has been affected. Then the party who brought the witness in order to explain these new facts will do re-examination. So you have to understand there is no given. This has not been given. I to understand it. They written the examination of a witness subsequent to cross-examination by the party who called him shall be re-examination. Shall be called re-examination. There is nowhere written what I am saying. But in practice, you should know this re-examination will not always be allowed. If you in a practice, the other party will not always be saying, I want to re-examination. Re-examination is a right. No way. Re-examination is also a right. But right to what extent? The re-examination is a right to what extent? To that extent, if new facts has come into play through cross-examination, which has not been explained by a party in examination in chief, then only re-examination is allowed. So suppose example, I ask certain questions in examination in chief, and certain questions are being asked by in cross-examination, and nothing new has been coming, which I have missed, and I want to ask new question now in re-examination. Hey, that is not allowed. The re-examination is basically being used as a tool by a party only at the stage, at the point where it finds that something has happened in cross-examination which may affect the credibility of his witness. This much of discretion lies with the court. So during examination in chief and cross-examination in chief, this much of discretion is not given. During examination in chief and cross-examination, once you have proved that the witness is relevant and witness's testimony is worthy under section 118, you can go for cross-examination and ask questions. You can go cross-examination, ask questions subject to Indian Evidence Act. We will understand that what questions may be asked, what question may not be asked. But when it's come to re-examination, there is nowhere written, but Supreme Court in so many judgments clearly provides. So if you see Nagaram versus State of Madhya Pradesh, you will find that Supreme Court clearly says that if you want to go for re-examination, no doubt, re-examination is your right. But the discretion lies to the court to the extent that it will see that you are not generating new evidences through re-examination. Rather, you are trying to create explanation to what has come into cross-examination. Uske baad, if it is a furtherly generated into a new fact, that is a different thing. Because every time if you do something new in re-examination, so every new fact is to be crossed. So this will lead to a pendency of suit. It will lead to delay in suit. So every time you will do re-examination, and every time you will produce new evidences or new facts, and every time the other party have to do cross-examination, and then every time again you will try to do explanation of these cross-examination, and you will again produce new evidence, and this will become a trap. So it will become a trap. It will be a web which cannot be breaked out. So therefore, Supreme Court says you must be very cautious. Okay, it is a right, no doubt, but have to be used very cautiously. Next, order of the examination, and that is very important. There only I will using the direction of re-examination, how you will re-examination. What I'm saying is been explained by section 138 to some extent also. Let me read to section 138. Witness shall be first examined in chief. If the adversary so desire, cross-examine. Then if the party calling so desire, re-examine. The examination and cross-examination must relate to relevant fact, but the cross-examination need not to be confined to the fact to which the witness is testified on his examination in chief. Then direction of re-examination. The re-examination shall be directed to the explanations of matter referred in cross-examination, and if new matter is by the permission of the court is introduced in a re-examination, the adverse party may further cross-examine upon that matter. This is what I'm talking about. So section 130 says, tell you the order. So first, the party who have brought the person can make the examination in chief, and if the other party will do cross-examination, and after that the re-examination will be done. But if the re-examination is to be done, re-examination will be explaining the cross-examination only. And if you want to introduce new facts, then obviously discretion lies with the court to introduce new facts. Court will. So this point, at this point, till this perspective, till the new introduction of new facts into the re-examination, discretion lies with the court. So obviously court will not stop you to re-examine. You can re-examine every time. But if you try to introduce new facts into the re-examination, court will interfere, firstly. Secondly, what you have to ask in cross-examination. You can ask anything in cross-examination. you can explain what has been asked in examination in chief. So when we are practicing, when we practice, so generally what happened, first we explain what questions has been asked in examination in chief. You always have the copy of that questions which has been asked in examination in chief, and you will try to uh, explain these examination in chief in questions. So suppose here, what is your name and all, how you will get to know, you will try to contradict these statements. And once you are over with these, or you over with the explanations, then you may also add new facts to this. The cross examination have a right to introduce new facts. The examination in chief have a right that you can ask any question. Cross examination, you can ask any question, you can give explanation to examination in chief, you can introduce new evidences, and if new evidences are being introduced, they can be re-examined by the party, but they cannot introduce new evidences. If they introduce new evidences, the party have to take the prior permission of the court, right? Then only it will be allowed. Next, what is the purpose of cross-examination? And this is a small thing which I want to read it. Purpose. The very purpose of the cross-examination is to ask question. I have explained this. Ask question regarding what the witness has stated in examination. The answer in examination chief normally is replied to question, but an advocate of party who called it. Whether such a statement are reliable or not is to be tested through cross-examination. This is important. So I have called a particular person. I may have tutored him. I have met giving a tuition to him. I have tutored him that okay, I will ask these questions to you, and you have to reply these answer. So what basically cross-examination do? Cross-examination, if you have a wonderful art of cross-examination, if you know the right techniques of cross-examination, you may get into the nerves of a witness and find it out that no, this is a witness who has been tutored. And if a witness has been tutored, obviously a judge will not rely upon that witness. The credibility or reliability or testimony credibility of that person will get impeached, right? So obviously the main purposes of the cross examination is to lower down the credibility or the veracity of the witness. But obviously cross examination is not only restricted to this veracity perspective only, or lowering the credibility only, but also you may through cross examination stronger your part. You may make it clear that your party is not involved in particular allegation or particular charges or anything which has been, whether it be a civil case, whether it be a revenue case, whether it be a criminal case. Cross examination will be a beneficial to your party by you can make it more stronger on that part. This is now it is an important part, very important part. What to ask in cross examination? This is something you must know. What is to be asked in a cross examination? Suppose I have start my cross examination, I have to be very clear. There are certain restrictions upon cross examinations. There are certain things in a cross examinations which cannot be asked. The first thing is a leading question. Let us try to understand leading question. So let us go into section 140, 141, 142, and 143, and so on. So let me go into section 140 first and try to find out what do you mean by leading questions. We will understand the meaning of leading question. An advocate must know what do you mean by leading questions. Leading questions. This has been wrongly stated by me. Please spare me for this. This is 141. This is when can be asked 143, and this is 142. Right? Please spare me for this. Leading question. The 141 will go Indian Evidence Act, and we'll try to find out what do you mean by leading questions. If I talk about generally, after reading it, we'll discuss how to be asked. Any question suggesting the answer which the person putting it wishes or expects to receive is called leading question. Try to understand. Generally, if you ask anybody what is leading question, this is the question suggesting answer in itself. But you are an advocate. How you will get to know that a particular person is asking a leading question in a cross examination? Is a leading, let it be कब पूछेंगे कब नहीं पूछेंगे, that is a different perspective. What type of questions can be a leading questions? You should know this. For example, I asked Mr. X, okay, so you are Mr. X. What does it mean? If I asked a particular witness, Mr. X has come as a witness, and I asked him, okay, so Mr. X, what is your name? Obviously, what I am explaining my answer, expecting answer to him. For example, another question. Suppose somebody has come as a witness in a murder case or in a rape case, and he is coming as a witness, and the party is asking, and the advocate is asking question, what? Okay, you have come as a witness in a rape case of Mr. B, Miss B, or in a murder of Mr. B. What is this? What is this? This is a leading question. He is suggesting the answer. Yes, yes, I have come for the rape case of Miss X or B or Mr. X or B. Similarly, he asking a question. So, what you see on 1st January 2020 at Lakshmi Nagar metro station on 5th floor or on the 1st floor of building 100, that why was living there, or what has it? Seems to be that you are asking something else and you're suggesting something else, that you want him to why X to be there. So whenever you try to put something through your questions into the mind of a witness, which suggest him that yes, I have to answer this to the advocate, such type of question will always be called leading question. So if you go into court and you always see, if you go into, basically if you're practicing in a Hindi court, you always see advocate is asking, तो सोमवार को राम कहाँ पर था? अच्छा, तुम और राम चाय की दुकान पर खड़े थे, ठीक है. अब ही वांट टू नो कि तुम खड़े कहाँ थे, और वो बोल रहा है अच्छा तो तुम और राम चाय की दुकान पर खड़े थे. अभी दिस सीम्स टू बी जनरल क्वेश्चन, but he's suggesting answer कि he want the answer that me and Ram was standing in front of tea stall, because the act of offense is a tea stall, the place of offense. Such type. So you, every time being an advocate of opponent party, you must, any party, let it be, because we have not entered when to be asked, when not to be asked. You must know whether a question is a leading question or not. Even you are asking it, because leading question may have some effects upon your examination or cross examination. Anybody having a question may drop message at my chat box. I will be answering it. Don't worry. Here only. Okay. Suppose Ayushi is asking a question. I have seen in couple of evidences where the lawyer had asked, मेरा ये कहना है कि आपने ऐसा किया. So obviously it is a leading question, but important is this, at what stage, because we have not understand the effect of leading case. Obviously this is the leading question, but what is the effect of these leading question? Obviously we will see to it. If we let us read section 141, 142 and 143 all together to understand the effect. 141. Any question suggesting the answer which the person putting it wishes or expects to receive is called leading question. We have understand this. Second, 143 I am asking. Leading questions may be asked in cross-examination. First, you must know that during the cross-examination you may ask leading question. So for example, Ayushi ने एक सवाल मुझको किया. For example, she said, I have seen the couples of evidence wherein the lawyer has been asked. मेरा ये कहना है कि आप मेरे यहाँ पर थे. Obviously, if this question has been asked in cross-examination, this is allowed. To suppose during the cross-examination, the advocate says, अच्छा, तो तुम और राम चाय की दुकान पर खड़े थे. No doubt, this is a leading question. but this is allowed because it's a cross examination. Okay, but let me see 142. Leading question must not, if objected to by the adverse party, be asked in examination in chief or in re-examination except with the permission. This is your roll come. The leading questions generally are not allowed in examination. When I say not allowed in examination of chief, try to understand, they are not barring it. This says if the opponent party stops you to ask the question. So this is the role of a defendant advocate, not a judge. Try to understand, it is not a role of a judge. Suppose I have brought up a person as a witness into a court, and now I am asking a leading question to him. And you obviously, whenever there is an is record of witness evidence, the opponent advocate and party is present. Suppose during the examination in chief, question is being asked by the advocate to his witness, which is of leading nature. You can interfere. You can ask the judge. Simple, you say to the judge, sir, this is a leading question. And if you say this, now it is a power of a judge to stop you there, stop the prosecution and say, sorry, you cannot ask this question because the party is not willing to you to ask the leading question. So whenever a leading question has been asked in examination in chief, the adverse or advocate have a power to stop him, firstly. Secondly, once it is stopped, the discretion lies to the court. Now court will see, and court will see if court finds no such leading question will lead to good evidence, they may allow it. If it find that no, it does not lead to good evidence, rather it is a tutoring case, it may stop it. So it is now the discretion of a judge. So you always understand that the leading questions are freely be asked. Nobody will stop you during the cross examination, but there is a limit, restriction rather, or I will say discretion of the court during the examination in chief, that if you ask the leading question during the examination in chief, the adverse party may stop you, and judge will see whether these to be asked or not. If it find okay, he will allow it. If it not find okay, he will not allow it. Right? There is a question. Let me take the question first. Achyut is asking, if the advocate asks during if what happened in June 2000, will that be a leading question? No, this is not a leading question. What happened in June 2019 is not a leading question. It is general question. Leading question is, okay, in June 2019, theft was done. Now it is a leading question because answer will be a theft. So this is a leading question. Okay. Then Saurabh is asking, cross examination is taken again of the same witness, will it be called re-examination? No. Cross examination will always be called cross examination if taken 2 times, 3 times, 4 times. In a particular, Rohini is asking, in a particular case, I was with the complainant advocate and the judge was helping to write down the examination in chief, helping the witness with words or helping with framing sentence. So is that a good sign? Yes. Judge can help the witness to frame the sentences, firstly. But secondly, question is it a good sign? Answer is no, it is not a good sign. Generally, CPC and CRPC very clearly says that the evidence must be recorded into the language of a witness. So if a witness is giving a tutti-frutti language, it must be recorded in that language. But to a certain extent, for example, witnesses of such a nature who does not know ka, ki, grammatical mistakes are coming. So obviously a judge can help him to make a grammatical mistake. Okay? So he's not making grammatical conjunctions rightly. So that part can be done by a judge, that is allowed to give a meaningful. But he should not put new words into the mouth of a witness. The judge should not do this. This is not allowed. This is wrong practice. But what do you say? Framing and everything is allowed. That is good. Ayushi, yes, leading question can be asked in एग्जामिनेशन, ठीक है। डीवी केस डायरेक्ट क्रॉस एग्जामिनेशन करने, प्रीति पोदर, इन डीवी केसेस डायरेक्ट क्रॉस एग्जामिनेशन, direct cross examinations directly, it is a will. Preeti, try to understand. Examination in chief is a wish, not a mandate. It is a wish of a party who has brought up the witness whether to examine him or not. Okay? If they do not examine, still you can directly go for cross examination. So it is not mandate that every time before the cross examination there must be examination in chief. So the party who has brought up the witness may not interested in to make the examination in chief. Still you can do a cross examination. Answer is yes, you may go directly to a cross examination. Ankur, can we keep a witness for cross examination later on and not directly after the chief examination? No, this is a wrong practice. If you see in a court, this is a wrong Ankur. I have seen in a court that generally what happened, the advocates say ki let the all examination chief of all witness happen, and after that I will do cross examination of all witness. This is a wrong practice. Judge will not be allowing it or should not allow this. After every witness examination in chief, cross examination must be done there only, in some other day only, but after examination in chief there must be cross examination of that witness. So this should not be followed ki okay, let it be examination chief of 10 witness first, then cross examination of 10 witness. No, this is not allowed. This is not good, because this will adversely affect the case. Then Rohini, in cross examination the advocate was bring out a previous dispute with some other parties of a witness. We will come to this. Don't worry, Rohini. Can you ask? Can you bring out the dispute? Yes, you can bring. Answer, Rohini, is allowed. It is allowed to the extent it impeach the credit of the witness. We will coming to that part. Neha is asking, sir, kindly brief how do we come to know that whether question is a leading question or not? Neha, answer is very simple. In order to understand whether a particular question will be is a leading question or not, what answer the witness is given, whether same thing is being used in a question also. If you are very new to this and you are not understanding that is it a leading question or not, so simple. If suppose Mr. Advocate has asked XYZ and answer is also coming XYZ, then yes, it is a leading question. Simple. So you always check the answer with the question. If you see that the question include the answer, the question include that word which is coming in the answer, that question will turn out to be a leading question. Don't worry. The next question is being asked, under what section do lawyer put a suggestion to a witness? Under what section do lawyer put suggestions to witness? Suggestions, lawyers cannot put suggestions to a witness. During the cross examination only they will be asking question. Suggestions is not allowed. Leading question में convert हो जाएंगे, right? हाँ, घर पे tutoring करके आते हैं practice में, वो अलग चीज है. That is a different thing. That is a part of practice, not a part of law. When you go to so obviously judge advocate always tutor the witness into his chamber and then go to court. That is a different thing. And generally if you see the other party and the judge and the advocate of other party will get to know this is a tutor or not. That is a different thing. Can a widow of an eyewitness who died immediately after the event, after letting the wife know the event, can widow be a witness of the case? Yes, why not? It can be, Shivani, it can be. For example, in a rape case, the lady was divorced and the advocate in cross-examination kept bringing out, you filed X number of cases against your husband. Rohini, we will come to this, don't worry, you can do this. Whether inference can be drawn at the appellate stage of the witness at the party taken after other witnesses. Yes, it can be, Ayushi. Sir, about EIC being compulsorily done before, question is Nitin. Sir, about examination of chief being compulsorily done before cross, is it a practice or section 138 permits the cross being done without examination of chief? Nitin, 138 allow the cross without the examination in chief. For example, if I read one section 38 again, if you see, witness shall be first examinant chief, ठीक है, and if the adverse party क्रॉस एग्जामिनेशन, ठीक है, तो एग्जामिनेशन चीफ मैंडेट है, मर्जी है करे ना करे, एंड एडवर्स पार्टी क्रॉस एग्जामिनेशन करे ना करे, ठीक है, तो इट कैन बी डन इवन विदाउट, तो एग्जामिनेशन चीफ में बोलना पड़ेगा ओके आई हैव ब्रॉट अप, आई हैव नो नथिंग इन एग्जामिनेशन चीफ, इट कैन बी क्रॉस एग्जामिनेशन, ठीक है, एडवर्स पार्टी आल्सो हैव ऑप्शन वेदर टू अलाउ और नॉट टू अलाउ. Which language asked in examination, which language recorded? First of all, language of the witness must be the language of the evidence to be recorded, right? Firstly. Secondly, there are certain provisions in CRPC and certain provisions in CPC where it is clearly marked that if a witness speaks such a language which cannot be understood by the court, then the interpreter can be used, and it can be used into the language of a court. But in such cases, it must be read out and explained to the witness, okay, through the interpreter. That is allowed. Next, let me move forward. I will be suggesting book also, don't worry. If anybody want to know the book, I will be suggesting book also, don't worry. Let me do this. Or one thing is, so you get to know what is leading question, when can be asked, when cannot be asked. We have done this. So when cannot be asked in examination in chief, generally it cannot be asked, okay, until you can ask it until the other party has not stopped it. But if other party stopped it, then it is a discretion of the court whether to allow or whether not to allow, and court always see while allowing it whether it is important factor or not, right? Next is question lawful in cross examination. That is very important to understand. What questions are lawful in cross examination? Let us go under section 146 and we try to find out what questions are lawful in cross examination. Why I'm saying it is very important. Why is it so important for us to this is my screen is clear, right? Nobody is having issue with my screen. Anybody having my issue with my screen? No, right? Let's see. Let me read 146. When a witness is cross-examined by, let me all please go for section 146. I'm reading it for you. We'll try to understand the meaning of few words. When a witness is cross-examined, he may, in addition to the question hereafter referred to be, ask any question which test his veracity, to discover who is he and what is his position in life, or to shake his credit by injuring his character. Although answer to such questions might tend directly or indirectly to criminate him, or might expose or tend directly or indirectly to expose him to the penalty of forfeiture. What is it? This is the benefit, and this is an addition given to you by Indian Evidence Act, that during the course cross examination you can always try to ask, you can always ask such questions which may affect the credibility. When I say veracity, I will use the general word credibility, which may affect the credibility of a witness. What do you mean by credibility of the witness? For example, you may prove that he is a stock witness. What do you mean by stock witness? That it is general. Stock witness is a very bigger term, but I'm using in a general term. There are certain people, if you go to Rohini court, if you go to Dwarka court, and if you go to somewhere bigger district courts, there are certain people who are sitting outside, always ready to be an evidence, to be a witness in any case on payment. Okay, these type of witnesses generally is known as a stock witness. I'm using in a general term. It may be specific also, because stock witness is a very broader term. We will come to that part also. So suppose certain witnesses are stock witness, and he is coming into a court, and you know that he's a stock witness. You may prove this, that this person appear as a witness in each and every case or each other second case of the court, and he does not have any connection with the party. Rather, he is what? He is bribery, or he is money taking, or it is his profession, or he is doing it to earn the business, anything, and you are able to prove it. This will affect the credibility of a witness. So during the cross examination, you can examine the witness and explain the questions which are asked in examination. Firstly, secondly, you may ask leading questions. Thirdly, you may ask such questions which, though not directly, why I'm focusing upon 146. Generally, if you see, parties are not allowed to ask any question which is irrelevant. I'm not saying in court. Parties are not allowed to ask irrelevant questions. But section 146 is something which give the opponent party to ask irrelevant questions. So if somebody asks you, can you ask irrelevant questions during examination? Answer is yes. In cross examination, you can ask irrelevant questions. That is what do you mean by irrelevant questions? Questions which does not have any connection with the case. But these questions are of such a nature which will affect the credibility of the witness. It will affect the genuinity of the witness. So obviously, I am a genuine witness or not, it is not directly related to my case. It is not directly relevant, but it is relevant. So section 146 make you ask questions which are not directly connected to fact and issue. Still, you can may ask the question so that you may make the witness unbelievable, or impeach its credit, or I will say unfaithful, or I will say you will affect its valuability or credibility of his evidence which he is giving. Okay? Or how you will do this. This says they give you option, but these options 146 is not exhaustive. Try to understand what is given. What is given in the section 147 is the list, which is not exhaustive. It is limited. It is exemplary list. Okay, it is not necessary you will ask only these questions. You can ask any question in any way. But what is this saying? They're saying they must relate that you are trying to impeach. You are trying to impeach his credit, or I will say you are trying to discover something which will affect his credibility. You can ask this question. But another thing, section 146 is your right. But can you compel? You can ask this question, no doubt. But answer is this: can you compel the witness to answer these questions? So if you are impeaching the credit of the witness, if you are trying this to affect his credibility, you can ask the question on section 146. But can you compel this witness to give answer? If you see section 146, the clause 3, it says to shake the credit. When I say credit, it is a character. Okay? By injuring his character. Although the answer to such question may tend directly or indirectly to criminate him, or might expose or tend directly or indirectly to expose him to penalty or forfeit. My question is this: suppose I'm asking certain question to him which may affect his credibility, and question is of such a nature that may charge him for another offense. Suppose this person has come. Let me take an example. Mr. X has come as an eyewitness into a murder case, which has happened under the home in Mr. A's home only. Now, Mr. X is not connected to Mr. A. The advocate is asking, what you are doing there? How you can be there? If he answered this, so suppose he was there because he was for theft, or he was about to do robbery there, or he was about to do any other crime into his offense or his house, and that he was available there. Obviously, if he gives this answer, this will lead him to a new offense. Can such question be refused by the witness? Can I compel him to answer this question? I can ask this question. Section 146 saying I can ask such question, but can I compel it? Answer lies under section 148. Section 148 of Indian Evidence Act give the answer to this. And what is the answer? Answer is that I'm not connecting it to fundamental right. Don't worry. ठीक है, fundamental right. We will not go into fundamental right because वहाँ का compulsion. फिर अगर ये वहाँ जाएंगे fundamental right में तो we'll go into CRPC and CRPC में compulsion अलग है ना, fundamental right का compulsion अलग है. फिर हमको फिर 164 में जाना पड़ेगा. फिर there is a very connectivity. I will not go into that part. कभी मौका मिलेगा बात को तो उसको फंडामेंटल राइट को 154, 157, 41, 40 एंड 167, 164 सीआरपीसी से कनेक्ट करेंगे और उसके बाद उसको सीपीसी से कनेक्ट करेंगे, तब समझ में आएगा कि कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल राइट क्या है, एविडेंशियरी वैल्यू क्या है, 300 क्या है सीआरपीसी का, वो सब दैट इज अ डिफरेंट पर्सपेक्टिव. Section 148. 148 gives the answer to this question and says it is a court. It is not the advocate who will decide whether the answer. So I have a right to ask the question. I can ask the question to impeach the credit, but I cannot compel the accused witness to answer these questions. The compulsion will be created by the court. So suppose I asked a certain question which is about to impeach the credit of the witness, and it is of such a nature which may lead him to certain offense. Or anything, I cannot compel this person. It is the court who is authorized to do this. An answer is given section 148 and guideline is being given to the court how they will compel. Let us see and read section 148 and try to find out what are the guidelines given to them. Right. If any such question relates to a matter not relevant to suit or proceeding, except as so far as it affects the credit of a witness by injuring his character. The line which I have explained, that the questions which are affecting the credit or character of a witness are not relevant generally. They are irrelevant. Section 148 talking about those questions only. They're saying if an advocate has asked a question which is about to impeach the credit of the witness and nothing else, it is not directly relevant to the case. It is something which is only impeaching the credit of the witness. The court shall decide whether or not witness shall be compelled to answer it, and may, if he think fit, warn the witness that he is not obliged to answer it. That court decide. Court shall decide. This is mandate upon the court. It is a discretion of the court. The court shall decide. The judge, advocate cannot force it to answer. The court shall decide whether the witness shall be compelled to answer or not. Court will say whether he have to answer or not. And if court find that it is something which is not required to answer, there is a duty upon the court, and may, if it think fit, warn the witness that he is not obliged to answer it. Or if court find this is something which is not to be compelled, this is a question which is not to be compelled to be answered, first it will refuse the accused advocate that please do not compel him to answer. Secondly, it will inform the accused also or the witness also that please, you are not obliged, you are not bound to answer this question, and this is not going to affect you anymore. Next, in exercising its discretion, the court shall have regard to the following consideration. This is again manner how the court will determine. It is a duty of the court to see that how the court will determine whether the question is to be compelled to be answered or not. So while deciding whether the question is of such a nature which can be compelled to answer or not, they provides what is to be seen. First, such questions are proper if they are such a nature that the truth of imputations conveyed by them will seriously affect the opinion of the court as to the credibility of a witness on a matter to which he testified. This says, while deciding whether the question is to be compelled to answer or not, the first test which the court or a judge is to do is that he will check whether if I allow this question to be compelled to answer, how materially will it affect the testimony or credibility of the witness, and says if judge found that yes, if I compelled him, to answer, and if his credit is got impeached, his character has been impeached, then my view will totally be different what I am having right now. If answer is yes, then he should allow the accused, the witness, to be compelled to answer. So this is the first test. The first test that the judge have to make is that he have to see, put himself into the position of a witness and see, okay, I compel him right now, and he will answer in such a way that he will get impeached. And if he impeached, suppose he impeached, what I will do then? I will totally change my mind. If answer is yes, then you should compel the accused witness to answer the question. Second, obviously, advocate will try to do this. Second, such questions are improper if the imputations which they convey relates to a matter so remote in time or such a character that the truth of the imputation will not affect or would affect a slightest degree the opinion of the court as to the credibility of a witness on the matter of which he testified. Then says, if the judge get the answer, it is going to affect me slightly, or it is not going to affect at all, uh, or rather it relates to a matter which is very feeble in nature, very old in nature, and it will not as such affect my view regarding the witness, then he should not allow the advocate to compel the witness to answer. Right. Uh, Next, just it's a reading. These two things are important. Otherwise, reading, I'm reading it for you. Such questions are improper if there is a great disproportion between the importance of the imputation made against the witness character and the imputation of his evidence. The court may, if see fit, draw from the witness refusal to answer the inference that the answer is, if given, would be unfavorable. So sometimes this is what they say. Sometimes court says in order to act safe, they instead of compelling, you draw a presumption that obvious accused is not answering, so we'll presume that he was giving an unfavorable answer to it. If he give it, it will go against it. So according to that presumption, you may make a mind. Right, you can do that also. Next. This is another question. I want to now. I am asking certain questions which are about to impeach the credit. I will say impeach the credit, matlab it is going to affect the character of the witness. And I'm obviously have said that it will be a court which will be deciding. But how can I ask the question? Try to understand. Section 146 gives me the power to ask the question which may directly affect the character of a person. Character is a very big thing. It's not a reputation, it's a character. So I am trying to impeach the character. So should I ask any question in any whims and fancies? Can I ask question upon my whims and fancies? Answer is no. I will not be allowed to ask question upon my whims and fancies. Section 149 is saying clearly of Indian Evidence Act, if you ask any question which is about to impeach the credit or character of a witness, you must have a reasonable ground for it. So what is section 149? No such question as is referred to in section 148 sought to be asked unless the person asking is have a reasonable ground for thinking that the imputation which is conducted is well founded. So until you want to impeach the credit, you want to say, okay, you are a person of a bad character, and you want to prove that person is a bad character, and you are asking question under section 146 for a bad character, and under section 148 you are asking the court to compel him to answer also. So you must have a reasonable ground for it. If you don't have a reasonable ground for it, then section 150 will come into play. And section 150 says, if a judge or a vakil or an attorney asked a reasonable question, asked a question which are going to impeach the credit of the witness without any reasonable ground, then disciplinary action will be taken against you. So you always make clear when you are practicing as an advocate, you must be very clear and very cautious regarding your examination and cross examination. You should not ask any question upon your whim and fences, because any question which will uh, hit by section 146 or section 148, both are same thing. If it hit by one section 146 or 148 and it is regarding the factor, or you don't have any reasonable ground, so you say you are a woman of a bad character, or if a man of a bad character, and you try to compel him and prove him that he's a man of a bad character, and you don't have any reasonable ground, section 150 will come into play. And what section 150 says, if the court is of opinion that any such question was asked without reasonable ground, it may, if it was asked by any barrister, pleader, wakil, or attorney, report the circumstances of the case to the High Court or other authority to which such barrister, pleader, or wakil or attorney is subject in the exercise of his profession. So obviously, against such advocate who tries to impeach the credit of a witness without any solid ground, okay, action can be taken against him. Okay, professional misconduct can be taken against him. So while making your statements, while making recording the evidences, you must be very clear in your mind that if you whatever you are asking, you have a reasonable ground for it. If you are not having a reasonable ground for it, it will going to affect your professional personally. If I let me read one illustration for you. Section 149 have a very good illustration of it. We'll read for it. I will read illustration A first and then illustration C, both very important. A barrister is instructed by an attorney or a wakil that an important witness is a dacoit. The reasonable ground for asking the witness whether he's a dacoit. Okay, so barrister get to know information from a very solid person, reliable source that this person is a dacoit. He may ask the question because this is a reasonable ground to believe. Let's see illustration C. A witness of whom nothing whatever is known is asked in random whether he's a dacoit. So there is no evidences, no record, no person there to tell that he's a dacoit. And what happened? Attorney directly asks, "Are you a dacoit?" This is unreasonable question. So advocate simply asks, "Are you a man of a bad character?" Okay, you are a man of a bad character. What if we see in movies generally? Okay, such questions are not allowed. If you ask such question, you per se will be liable for your professional misconduct. Next, this is very important. Indecent and scandalous questions. This is not. What do you mean by indecent and scandalous questions? What I was explaining. While you are impeaching the credit of the witness, we try to bring out something which is very indecent, immoral, or you try to bring out something which is not at all existing. So you try to create certain facts, scenarios, okay, and by thereby you ask the question. If you ask such question, so if you try to ask indecent question, for example, let me read the indecent questions and I explain you what do you mean by indecent questions. Section 151. The court may forbid any question or inquiries with which it regard as indecent or scandalous. Although such questions are injurious or inquiries may have the bearing on questions before the court, unless they relates to a fact and issue or to a matter necessary to be known in order to determine whether or not fact is being exist. Try to understand. This says you cannot ask scandalous or indecent questions. So, and what do you mean by indecent question? Are you a prostitute? Are you involved in sexual work? You are a sexual worker. You are involved in kidnapping directly, not without any reason, or you are planned anything. You can ask any question. You are a plender. You can ask any question like this. Court says you will not allow such question until such question per se only, slavery only, then obviously you can ask this question. But into the first, you cannot ask such questions which are indecent and scandalous. It will not be allowed. Same way, question intent to insult annoy. So any question which is about to insult you or annoy you, that is not allowed until they are directly factual issue. Or what do you mean by annoy? Okay, who says, okay, you have come as a witness. Your father does not have a faith upon you. How can we have a faith upon you? Your father never have a faith upon you. Why? How is it possible if my father is not having a faith upon me? How does it affect my credibility? This is annoying. This is insulting. There might be the personal reasons also. So why should I believe you? Your wife is not having a respect for you. So why this court should have a respect for you? Your wife is not having respect for you. Respect for you. She always beats you. This is what? This is insulting. This is annoying. This is not allowed. Obviously, if it relates to something which is related to personal matter only, family issue only, where such question is directly connected to fact and issue, then it's okay. Otherwise, it's not allowed. This is something which is not allowed, right? Next, exclusion of evidence to contradict whether question of testing or, and this is important, section 152. 151 and 152 we have done. The next question, I will important to explain this. How we will impeach the credit. This is important. So we have done. Question is there. Ayushi, annoy is a wide term. Anything can annoy anyone. So, one hand we have impeached the credit, and on the other hand we cannot annoy. Try to understand. Annoying word is not being used in a general sense. Annoy in the sense that is not at all relating into anything. It is not relating to fact and issue. It is not trying to impeach credit. It is generally asked. So Ayushi, the annoy word is used then generally asked. So matlab, he is not impeaching the credit. Obviously, impeaching the credit witness will always be something which affect this. This advocate is not impeaching the credit. Rather, it is asking general questions. So if you go into practice, advocate have habit to ask as many questions as possible, which frustrates the witness. For example, what do you have in a food? Why you have this in a food? Why you have come for this? It keep on annoying. It keep on insulting. Such questions they are when you stopped under section 151 and 152. Right. This is very important. 155. Impeaching the credit of the witness. So now I want to impeach the credit in the witness, section 146A. So what is the manner? How I will impeach the credit is given under section 155. This again is an example series. I can use any other manner also, but these are example series. A credit of a witness may be impeached by following ways: by the adverse party, or with the consent of the court, the party who calls it. Right. So obviously, party who calls the witness can also impeach the credit if he has found to be a hostile witness. How? By the evidence of a person who testified that they form their knowledge of a witness, believe him to be unworthy of a credit. Second, by proof that the witness has been bribed. Third, by proof of a former statement inconsistent with any part of his evidence which is liable to be contradicted. Simple. So, Karen, how you will impeach the credit of a witness? Either you bring any person from the society who will say that yes, he is not unworthy, he is unworthy person who does not talk about truth and he is always talking about lies and everything. You bring such worthyful persons, or you bring up a person who will prove that yes, this witness has been bribed. What I was talking about is stock witness. He's been bribed. You can impeach the credit, or what? You can impeach the credit by showing the contradictory evidences. So you show that this person has spoken something somewhere, whether in this case or some other case. Same thing, same question has been asked to him, and he has given a different answer. And now he is giving a different answer. If that is you are contradicting, so even the contradiction will affect credit. For example, there is a case between Mr. A and B, where Mr. X has come as a witness, and the question arises whether A is a son of Mr. S. Let it be. Whether A is a son of Mr. S. X says No, son is A is not the son of Mr. X. Here, this way. Now after 4 year, 3 year, another case is going on between C and A. And here Mr. X again comes and says, A is the son of Mr. S. Now what? Same question being answered differently. Firstly, he says he is not a son. Now he is saying a son. Okay, if advocate prove these two statements, that these two statements are given by Mr. X only, this is known as contradiction. And if it is done, it will per se impeach the credit of the witness. It will per se affect the credibility of Mr. A. And it will be presumed that Mr. A is not worthy person to believe. It will impeach the credit. So you can do like this also. 150. This is another important sections which I want to go for it in a very quick way. 154 is very important. This is a cross examination of a party with his Naman. ठीक है. 155 you want me to again? Okay, I will do it again. Basically 155 क्या है? We see under 146, 148, 149, 150, 152, we see that the advocate have a power to impeach the credit of a witness. But while impeaching the credit of the witness, while impeaching the character of the witness, he will not ask scandalous question, insulting question, annoying questions, or generally also he will not ask insulting, annoying question. Firstly, secondly, if it is impeaching the credit of the witness, he will not ask these questions without reasonable grounds. Thirdly, the court have power to compel the witness whether to answer or not. So it will the court who will see whether such questions to be asked or not. 155 says, while such question is being asked, the what power without compelling, instead of compelling the witness to answer them, you can, without compelling the witness, you can impeach his credit. How you will impeach his credit? You bring some person other than the witness who will prove that this witness is unworthy. This witness is always telling lie in different cases, in different manners, or who can give an evidence that this witness has been bribed by a party who has brought it, or you can prove that this witness has already given a statement related to a question which has been asked to him in some previous case, or in this case only in some previous manner, in some previous examination. He has given some statement which is same as answer to the same question which has been asked now, and both are contradictory in nature. If yes, then they can be amount to a impeach of credit. So 155 give you idea that without even compelling a witness, how you can impeach his credit, right? Then 154, another very important and very required to understand. Sometimes what happened, we call a witness, and while we call a witness, that witness turn hostile. Hostile means he start giving evidence against me only. So I have called a witness for examination and chief in my favor. I have called him to give evidence in my favor, and he start giving evidence against me. Then what? Then section 154 give me a power that I will ask the court that will you please allow me to cross-examine my own witness. Court have power to allow you. This is known as cross or evidence of a hostile witness, I will say. So when a witness turn hostile, the party who have to do examination and chief have power to make a cross-examination. Here a question too important to understand. This is what you study in your books. Very simple. But important thing to understand is this. Don't ask question for 2 minutes, because after this concept I will explain the questions. There will be so many questions. One important thing to understand is this. Suppose this witness is giving evidence, right? I have asked 10 questions which are in my favor, and from 11th question he turns hostile. Again, try my question, try to understand my scenario. What I have done, suppose let it be, suppose this is a evidence going on, this is evidence going on. These are the questions being asked by me, my favor. And from after this, what happened? This person turn hostile. These are the hostile answers. He start giving hostile answer. And after that, so he giving start, I did a cross examination. This is cross examination. So obviously, when he is giving a hostile witness, I asked court that please allow me a cross examination. Court allow the cross examination. Now question arises: what about the question which has been asked? What about these questions? These questions. This one, red one. What is the evidentiary value of this? Does it lose its evidentiary value? The question which were in my favor, the questions answer in which are my favor, thus I can still use them because this person has given certain questions in my favor, certain answer in my favor, and then he turned to be hostile. So therefore, I cross-examined him. But the question which were answered in my favor, can I use them as a witness evidence in my favor now? Because he has turned hostile. Can I use this answer to my favor? Answer is yes. Section 154 clearly says merely because the person, the witness has turned to be hostile, it does not mean that you cannot use his evidence which was in your favor. Uh, Answer is yes, you can. So any this witness who has come as a witness in your case has given evidence in your favor, you can still use that part in your favor as a part of examination, right? This is section 154. Let me take if you have any queries, you can ask. Let me. Imran is asking: is evidentiary proof required to prove a reasonable ground? For example, if the person with the instruction from other asks the witness he is dacoit, what will the other person be questioned in the court before asking the? No. I have a reasonable ground. I asked, I am a dacoit. I asked, are you a dacoit? Now this person pleads, no, this is not a reasonable question and everything. I will say, sir, I have a reasonable ground because I have been informed by this person and I am asking. Now the obviously my burden is get over. Obviously, this person, if court want to ask that person whether you are given a false information or not, that is a different topic. Next is Achyut is asking, can the contradiction of a statement given to a police and the statement given before the court is used to shape the credit? No. Contradiction of a statement given to a police officer and a statement given in a court, both are different and now want to contradict it. Answer is no. Statement recorded by police officer have no evidentiary value. Yes, but if a statement is recorded in the section 164 CRPC by a magistrate during the police custody, yes, that can be used for contradiction and corroboration. Ayush is asking, can this provision be used against the party itself who is a witness in his own case? Also, if the lawyer feels that the contention of the party itself is the evidence can go against him, can the lawyer use this provision lead the parties to appropriate answer? Yes, obviously he can, right? Next, this is very important. Now cross examination is going on, everything is going on, whether it be examination, cross examination. Do judge have a power to interfere? Because you should know this, you're an advocate, you should know, do judge have a power to interfere in it? Answer is yes. Under section 136, read with section 165 of Indian Evidence Act, a judge have power to interfere into the matter directly. He can ask any questions, whether, and even he can ask irrelevant questions. So advocate have no power to ask a relevant question except impeaching the credit of the witness. But judge can ask irrelevant questions to the accused directly without giving any warning. So there is no need to give warning. Judge is sitting and may directly ask, okay, you tell me this, you can tell me this. Right? And this power is to be used through section 311 CRPC and 313. 311 CRPC is a place where the judge have a power to call the witness or question the witness anytime, anything. And the 313 is a mandatory provision where the defense and prosecution evidence there the mandatory provision is to examine the accused by the court. So, this is the power of a judge during the for regarding the examination of a witness. So 165, 136, 311, and 313. He have power to examine the person, any person whom he feel. Even he can call a person who has not been called by any party, and he find that yes, I have to call this person because I feel this person is important, and no other party has called that person as a witness. He call him, and if he called him, he will be the person who come be considered as a court witness. There are certain terminologies which you normally see when you practice as an advocate. These words are being used by court. You should know what do you mean by these witnesses. The terminologies used for witnesses. This is my last slide. After that, we will be open for discussion directly. I will be unmuting. You can ask me direct questions. Terminologies. These try to understand these terminologies. First is chance witness. What do you mean by chance witness? If you find this word, anyone, just hold on. If you find anything, chance witness, so what happened basically? Suppose suppose there is something. Suppose you are standing somewhere, and an offense happened, and you were present there by chance, and you become a witness of the scene there. Eyewitness, we call them. Okay, that is known as chance witness. Okay, next is a child witness. What do you mean by child witness? Obviously, any person who is tender age come as an evidence for in a court for an evidence. This is known as child witness. What do you mean by trap witness? Trap witness, try to understand. Decoy, spy, or prey witness, he called it. What do you understand by trap? What happens sometime? What police do? Police put their informatives into the gangs of people who are gangs of dacoits or gundas and everything. What we see in movies, that police put his man into with the group of the bad people. Okay, and they give the information to the police, and on that information, police arrest these people. The person who helps the police being a part of that is known as trap witnesses. Okay, they are, and these all witnesses are credible. Don't worry. What do you mean by dumb witnesses? Dumb witness, basically who cannot speak or who cannot hear, is known as dumb witness. Still, he can be a very good witness. Hostile witness, I have told. Inamicable or interested witness. What do you mean by inamicable or interested witness? Interested witness are those witnesses, those people who are having their personal interest into a matter in dispute. For example, party itself, relatives of the party, victim itself, they all are coming as a witness, known as interested witness. Okay. What do you mean by punch witness? Another important. If you have studied a little bit of CRPC or even a CPC, you find that there are certain provisions in which it is being said. For example, arrest. For example, search and seizure. For example, inquest report. Panchnama. You find that it has been written that the police will have two witnesses of society to sign the document. So those witnesses which were present when the search and seizure was happened, when the arrest of a person was made, when the inquest report was made, and they have signed these inquest report or memos, okay, they are known as punch witness, and they can appear in a court, and they are always credible. Next is a stock witness. I have explained the stock witness. Stock witness is a very versatile term. It goes with so many things. So sometimes in a negative perspective, this is something where some particular person tried to be a witness in each and every case for money. He be a stock witness. Or sometimes what happened, there are certain persons who will become a evidence witness in every case. For example, there is an investigation going on and head constable go every time crime scene, and he's the first person to see the crime scene. So in each and every case, he's becoming a witness of the crime scene, first viewer of the crime scene. Okay, he will be termed as a stock witness. It is every time changing. Ayush is asking for court witness. Okay, or hostile witness. Okay, so we'll go for this. I will stop sharing it. You can ask me question by raising hand, right? I'm stopping it. You can ask me by sharing, raising your hand also, and I will give you the answer. By then, before I will start, I will give answer to first two. Okay, so let us first answer to what do you mean by court witness? If I say what do you mean by court witness, the witness which has been called by the court. Okay, the court called it itself. A party have not called it. So under section 165 of Indian Evidence Act, the power court have a power. Read with section 311 and 313. Court have a power to call a person as a witness. And if court have called a particular person as a witness, he will be called as court witness. Right? Imran is asking for hostile witness. Who is a hostile witness? Who is a hostile witness? A hostile witness, for example, any person who loses his credibility to the party who has brought it. When I say who loses the credibility to a party who brought it, let us take an example. I bring a person to a court. I bring a person to a court, and I want this person to give evidence in favor of me, but he start talking against me while I was examining him. This is known as witness are turned hostile. Right? Can you repeat once again the chance witness? Guru, the chance is basically chance witnesses. Any person who become a witness by chance because he was present at the crime scene by chance, and therefore he is considered as chance witness. So sometimes we called it as an eyewitness also, right? Next is, can an interviewer give evidence and is the interested witness? Yes, it can be interested witness. Why not? Okay. Then Rohini is asking, minor contradiction do spoil the credibility of witness? No. A minor introduction will not per se affect the credibility of the witness. It is always the court who will decide whether the credibility of the witness has been affected badly or not. Right? Could you please explain about refreshing memory? Vijay Lakshmi Raju, what do you mean by refreshing memory? Basically, if you try to understand, section 149 of Indian Evidence Act give a power to a witness that sometime when he is coming as an witness into the court, he has told something in early 5, 6, 7 years back, and now he's again coming to the court. He might not have remembered what he has said, so he may ask for the refreshing memory. He may ask that please give me my old statements so that I can recognize what I have told. This is basically available mostly to the police officer. We will be doing refreshing memory, Vijay Lakshmi. In our next sessions, our seniors will be talking about this. If they don't, so in conclusion ceremony, I will explain that. Punch witness. Punch witness is, I told you punch witness. If I will say punch witness, what do you mean by punch witness? If you see arrest, in arrest there is a provision that if you arrest someone, there must be some person present, or there is, if you do search and seizure, if you search and seize some property, there must be some person available during the search who will sign the search memo. They must be most reputed person of the society. In CRPC you find this. Those person who has been signing these documents as a reputed person of the society are known as punch witness. Can chance witness be a circumstantial evidence of the case? Yes. Saurabh, yes, chance witness is always circumstantial evidence. All are circumstantial evidence. Next is Ayushi Khan and okay, we have done this. Preeti is asking 156 subclause 3 or private company case petitioner can list authorities receiving complaint grievance call as witness. Yes, they can be called as witness. Why not? Can we shake the veracity of our own witness with turn? Bilkul Achut, we can shake hostile witness ko, we can do everything like a cross examination. On what circumstances and manner can a credit of witness be impeached by adverse party? On what circumstances, Vijay Lakshmi, I will say on the circumstances we have discussed, that he has bribed, that he is a stock witness, that he is always untrustworthy of member of the society, he is not a right person in the society, he does not have a good reputation in the society, he is a person of a bad character in the society. By through this we can do this. Anku sir, can a person presented as expert witness allowed to provide their expertise without considering leading question? Yes, why not? Why not? Ankur, yes, he can. Madhu, if court grants leave to lead rebuttal evidence, will there be a chance for cross examination on the rebuttal evidence, rebuted evidence? Madhu, basically rebuttals, try to understand, if you are into practice, we call it rebuttal, but they are re-examination. Dekhiye, rebuttals are something which has been in a written form, so we give plant ws, replica, then rebuttals, they are written form. So obviously the word rebuttal has been used in the practice, I know, but basically it's a re-examination. So obviously every time it will be allowed to do cross examination of the rebut. Right. Madhu, Himanshi, how can we examine a hostile witness? 154 I saw how to examine cross examination. There is no examination of hostile witness, there is cross examination by me also and other party also. If other party want to examine it, he can do it because it has turned hostile. So obviously the other party want to do examination because it has turned in their favor, right? Imran is asking, let me know. You can raise your hand, I can unmute you also. If a credit of my own witness is impeached by myself because of an hostile, yes, you can do it. Imran, uh, how to discredit expert witness? Ankur, I does not take the question, I does not understand the question. How to discredit expert? Acha, how to credit, how to affect the credit of the expert witness? uh, Expert witness credit cannot be impeached in such, because if he, obviously you can prove only in expert cases, you can only prove what you can prove, that this person is not giving evidence onto the grounds on which is to be theories are wrong. Okay, this is how you can do. Abhi, my voice is audible, right? Next is Ayushi knows this, my voice creates a problem, hai na? Re-examination is not a right, it is done at the discretion of the court. Yes, yes, re-examination is a right, no doubt, but discretion lies into the fact that during the re-examination you will not be allowed to introduce new questions. If you want to introduce new question, then you have to take the permission of the court, right Ayushi? Ayushi, मेरा ऐसा कहना है, Ayushi is asking, I have seen couple of evidences wherein the lawyer had asked, मेरा ये कहना है कि आपने ऐसा किया. Is this a leading question? Answer is yes, this is a leading question, and therefore it is to be seen when it is to be asked. Okay, if it is being asked in a cross examination, it's valid. If it is asked in an examination in chief, it is still valid, but it will be not valid if it has been contradicted or it has been stopped or objected by the adverse party, right? We have done with all questions. Can we now can we make a hostile witness a credible again? Yeah, hostile witness does not mean credibility has been lost. Hostile witness means he turned hostile, he is not giving right evidence in his favor, he is giving evidence in other favor, his credibility is not affected. Hostile witness does not mean the witness is not credible. तभी तो मैंने बोला कि even the part which is being told can be used, right? Yes, yes. Imran, yes. If I have impeached my own witness, will my evidence from such witness will be valid as per section 154? Answer is yes, it can be valid. Right. Hopefully this session was good. You don't have any more questions. We have the next session at 3, right? So Sanjay sir will be joining. We were having 2-hour session with him, but due to some emergency, he is not in Delhi and he have to leave for Jaipur. So he have arranging a 1 hour for us. Okay, so we'll try to take his 1 hour extra for last session so that we will catch up for this. Okay. Okay, Naman, I forget to suggest a book. So I will suggest you a good book. I will suggest a wonderful book I have with me. Pillai. Anna. So, Pillai is a very good book on cross-examination and justice. One is Justice Krishna Iyer's book is there for cross-examination. LexisNexis, both are LexisNexis publication. You can go for it's a book for cross-examination only. So you can go for Pillai. Rohini, dear sir, I honor of Tower 2. On my behalf, I'm asking Ms. Rohini question. Please let me ask Rohini question what she's asking. Let me see Rohini's question. On behalf of Mr. Suresh to show my apartment to future tenant, I wasn't put apartment in it. I requested to provide him the access to my uncle occupied for rent. Okay. Rohini, right. Shivangi, thank you, sir, for devoting your precious time. Well, thank you, Shivangi. Rohini, BL Bansal is very good. Don't worry, BL Bansal is very good book. Thank you. Hopefully, this session was little productive to you. And we had the theoretical part. I tried to give most maximum provisions of theoretical which are related to cross examinations and the examination in chief. In next session, we'll have practical sessions. See you all at 3. Vijay Lakshmi, you can ask question. Anybody still have to ask any question? I am there. You can ask me a question. You can even you can even raise your hand. I can unmute you. You can directly ask me a question. Questions are always welcome on our portal. Okay, so we are always open because our aim is to provide maximum knowledge that we can. Okay, so we are always open for this question. You can ask. Vijay Lakshmi, ask the question. Preeti, I am unmuting you. Don't worry. Let me unmute you, sir. I'll ask you to unmute yourself. Yes, you can ask, Preeti.
Sir, good evening. Oh, good afternoon. Sir, audible I am?
Yes, you're audible.
My question is, again, I am asking you the list of the witnesses which we are giving in the examination in chief. It is as per the sequence it will go, or one by one. The first the witness is taken.
No. There is no sequence. You'll give the list at one chance, but there is no need to make it sequence. First will come this, second will come this. Suppose you put Mr. A on first list, point 1. You can examine it on and the last also. So there is no need. You have to follow the people in the list only. I have this person is first. I have to examine this person first. No. You make a list in any way, and you can examine in another way also. Doesn't matter. But one
means कि नहीं मतलब कि एग्जामिनेशन चीफ सबका होगा उसके बाद क्रॉस एग्जामिनेशन या पहले एक का हुआ देन उसके बाद फिर क्रॉस एग्जामिनेशन कुछ भी हो सकता
नहीं राइट थिंग इज प्रीति वेरी क्लियर कि पहले एक जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल मैंने 10 विटनेस का लिस्ट दिया और आउट ऑफ दैट 10 मैंने पहले को एग्जामिन किया जैसे ही उसको एग्जामिन किया तभी उसका क्रॉस एग्जामिनेशन हुआ फिर सेकंड फिर क्रॉस एग्जामिनेशन होगा ठीक है बट वी सी इन सम कोर्ट्स इट हैपेंस कि हम 10 को पहले एग्जामिन कर लेते हैं फिर वो 10 को वो क्रॉस एग्जामिन करते हैं ठीक है दैट इज अ रॉन्ग प्रैक्टिस but if as a law perspective you try to understand it is one by one so if you examine one person there only he will be cross examined why it is to be happen because or this is the right practice also why because suppose we examine 10 person what will happen this other advocate will get a chance he will get open to all the questions which are possible to him so he will start asking so many questions to each and every person okay it will affect your case only so obviously after examination chief there only the examination,
Cross.
cross-examination must be done, and the evidence of that witness must be closed, right?
अगर सर उसको कोई बीमारी हो जाए, नहीं आए, कितने दिन तक टाइम पीरियड होता है कि लिमिटेशन की इतने दिन तक नहीं आया देन उसको स्टॉप कर देंगे या केस पे इफेक्ट? वो
एडवोकेट इज नॉट डूइंग क्रॉस एग्जामिनेशन.
नहीं, वो जो विटनेस है उसका
उसको
चीफ हो गया, अब उसका क्रॉस होना है, और वो व्यक्ति मान लीजिए बीमार हो गया, कुछ हो गया या चला गया कहीं, देन क्या होगा उस विटनेस का?
एग्जैक्टली तो उसके एविडेंस की कोई वैल्यू नहीं रहेगी, बिकॉज इट इज द रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी ऑफ द पब्लिक, द पिटिशनर, to bring this person available for cross examination also, and if this person is not coming for cross examination, so you will lose that witness evidence. That witness evidence will not be read in your case.
Is there any limitation period? कितने दिन तक आए?
No, there is no limitation period, but obviously the other party is continuously requesting you and you are not bringing it, so within reasonable time. There is no time period as such, but it is says, suppose this person is already asking you from last 2 months, 3 months, and you are still not bringing it up, and hanging the case. So this witness will lose his credibility, and this witness will lose his evidence. But there is no as such
limitation
time zone period. Yes, right.
Thank you.
Any person who want to get unmute, please raise your hand. Okay. Thank you. Anyone who want to ask any more question, please? Achyut, okay. I'm unmuting you, beta. You can ask me question. Achyut Deshpande, please ask me a question. I have unmuted you. I'm not getting a voice. Right. Vijay Lakshmi. Achyut, yes, ask please.
Sir, so at one instance, I was taking a chief, and all of the sudden my witness says that he doesn't remember. So then, is it necessary for me to declare him as a hostile witness, or can I put him a leading question without declaring him as hostile?
You can put him a leading question. What is the problem in leading question? You put the leading question there, and if you are lucky enough that the other party does not object it will go fine. If other party objected, then let the discretion lies on the court, and it will decide. And if courts, you satisfied the court, no, it is something which he missed, you can always make him remember, but still he does not give you a positive answer, then you make it declared hostile. So there is no need to make it declared hostile at one go, right? So there is a possibility he missed a chance, he missed to answer the question. So you can ask you can directly ask the leading question. If you're lucky the other party is not aware about these provisions, he will not object you, so you can go directly, and court will not interfere until he will object you. If he objects you, then you will ask the discretion of the court. If court is use the discretion, may allowed you. If it does not allow you, then you can think to make it hostile, right?
Okay, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay. Another question is Vijay Lakshmi sir, kindly answer my last question. Can a witness be excused from answering any question upon the ground that the answer to such question will be criminate such witness? Vijay Lakshmi, we have explained this perspective. Witness can excuse himself to answer question which may incriminate him, does not matter, he can excuse him. Okay, court will see, court may compel him. If he find that it is very important, it may compel him. Does not find it, it will not compel him. Yes, he can say no to it, right? Rohini, you want to ask some question, please? If you raise the hand, I can make you easily. Okay. What is the difference, what is the difference between shadow witness and a trap witness? Is the same, don't worry. The decoy, spies, shadow witness or trap witness are same. These are the same terminology used for same purpose, right? Any more question, please? Anyone else? Rohini, I'm unmuting you. You can ask me a question.
Hello.
Yes, you can ask me a question.
It's a particular case that I was working with my senior, I felt that the defendant lawyer was trying to prove that my client, who was the complainant in the rape case, that she's a constant litigator. Now, what was the purpose? In the cross, he kept saying, "Oh, you did these cases against your husband, and that's a different matter, and she's already divorced." Why was he bringing it here? But what is the purpose?
He's trying to Rohini is trying to impeach her credit. He's trying to prove that she is a person who tried to make allegations again and again. So if he proves that she's a person who tried to make allegations every day, second day to the husband, so she will lose this victim who is a victim of a rape, may lose its credibility. It will affect the credibility of the main victim. So obviously it will adversely affect the case.
Oh, but then she said that was my divorce case that time, and I had done maintenance.
That is, if the question asked has been explained, so obviously she will not, what the advocate was trying to impeach the credit, and it has been rightly answered. So he fails to impeach the credit, doesn't matter,
Okay, okay.
right?
Thank you.
He can ask such questions, right?
Yeah.
I'm asking Sundesh.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
My question is, as you have said, you can't compel any witness to give answer. Say, for example, if X is an eyewitness where in the murder of A, but if the prosecutor asks what you were doing in A's house, he's not, I mean, he can't be compelled to answer that. He could not be compelled to answer it, because if he answers it, I was about to commit robbery, then it will go against him. Then what is the remedy for the prosecutor then?
Yes, try to understand. Dekhi, we have to understand this in two perspectives. If a question directly connects to fact and issue, right, so you can compel him. But if a question is not connected to fact and issue, rather it is trying to impeach the credit of the witness only, then you cannot compel it. Then the remedy lied under section 148. But if the question is directly connected to fact and issue, then you can compel it. And the remedy lies this, that this witness have to reply these answer. However, as per CRPC, no action against such person will be taken for the any offense which has resulted out of that evidence, right? So you have to bifurcate my view into two perspective. Question directly connected to fact and issue, they can be compelled to answer, but question connected to impeaching credit of the witness only, not fact and issue, that cannot be compelled, right? This is what I have explained. I am not in generally we cannot say that it is they cannot be compelled, right? Anyone else? So we can close it. Acha, Preeti is again. Yes, Preeti, you can ask. I am unmuting you, Preeti. Please ask the question. I'm not getting unmute, right? Saurabh. Saurabh, I have asked you to unmute yourself. Please, you can unmute yourself. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Am I audible?